You know, I admit it, I'm going through it and it's horrible. And people are going, oh, I want to draw him because he's playing rubbish. Bonus. You know, so...
This is the story of a man who was born while his father sat in prison, raised by a 16-year-old mother who fled Scotland in the middle of the night, spent years unemployed on £14 a week, and nearly walked away from darts forever, before earning over £6 million as a two-time PDC World Champion, Peter Wright. And most fans still don't know the half of it. Peter Stuart Wright came into the world on the 10th of March 1970 in Livingston, West Lothian, Scotland, and from the very first day, the circumstances were against him. His mother was 16 years old, his father was serving time in prison. Wright has stated publicly that the two of them have never met. When Peter was just 3 years old, his mother's sisters threatened to take him away from her, convinced a teenage girl couldn't raise a child on her own, and that's when she made a decision that changed everything. One night, without warning, she packed what she had and ran to London, not because she wanted to leave, but because staying meant losing her son. Wright told Oki magazine, "My mum was 16 when she had me and my dad was in jail, but her sisters didn't think she was up to bringing me up at one stage and they were apparently talking about taking me off her. So my mum decided one night to just run away with me to London when I was only 3. It was obviously a very difficult time for her, but that's the only reason I left Scotland." London came first, then a drift across England through Suffolk, Norfolk and Cheshire, before Wright eventually put down roots in Mendham, Suffolk, where he still lives today. His mother now lives above his wife's hair salon, which means the family that nearly got pulled apart before he could walk ended up no more than a few minutes from each other. Darts entered his life through a television screen, watching Jockey Wilson, Cliff Lazarenko and Eric Bristow on BBC in the early 1980s gave a young Peter something to chase, and on his 13th birthday, he received his first set of darts. A dartboard was out of the question financially, so he threw them at trees instead. Within a few years, he could beat his stepfather and every one of his stepfather's friends, and the people around him in London were calling him one of the most gifted young players they'd seen. At 24, Wright qualified for the 1995 BDO World Championship at Lakeside, lost 3-1 in the first round to the eventual champion Richie Burnett, and then, for nearly a decade, professional darts went almost completely quiet for him. What fans see today is a two-time world champion with wild hair, big crowds, and a walk-on that fills an arena. What the cameras never showed was the version of Peter Wright that existed for most of his 20s and 30s, and that version of the story is the one that changes how you see him. Car cleaning as a teenager, delivering fizzy drinks on lorries at 12 years old, a youth training scheme as a motor, mechanic that never got finished, labour on building sites, pot washing in a holiday camp kitchen, fitting tyres and exhausts, fitting windows, none of it glamorous, none of it secure, and none of it darts. 4 to 5 years of those years went by with no work at all, living on £14 a week, and what that number actually means gets lost when people hear it now. £14 a week, not an hour, not a shift, a week. Wright spoke about it plainly to the This Express in 2015. "I was unemployed and didn't have time to play darts. It was really tough, and I couldn't afford to go to competitions by the time you've paid for electric, food, and everything else. People might say I'm up there now, but I was unemployed for 4 to 5 years and I've lived on £14 a week, or for 2 weeks. That's why I don't change as a person, because I'm grounded, and I never will change. No house owned, no savings to fall back on, and the person who kept his darts career alive financially during those early years wasn't a sponsor, wasn't a management company. It was his wife, covering flights and hotel rooms and entry fees out of her own pocket." Which brings us to Joanne, and to the most unlikely origin story in professional darts. Gunton Hall was a Warner's holiday camp in Lowestoft, Suffolk, and sometime around 1992, that's where Peter Wright, 22 years old, was washing pots in a kitchen, and where 18-year-old Joanne was working as a waitress. Jo later described the moment she first noticed him. "I found him sitting under a tree when I came out from work one day, kind of waiting for me." Their first daughter, Naomi, arrived in 1993. Then the relationship broke down, and for approximately 13 years, Peter and Jo had no contact at all. What brought them back together wasn't a chance encounter or a mutual friend. It was a 9-year-old girl on a laptop, their daughter Naomi, searching online for a father she'd never really known. Jo eventually tracked Peter down through an old PDC player profile that still carried a working phone number, turned up at his address unannounced, and knocked on the door. Jo told the Tops and Tails podcast, Well, there was big confusion to go with it all because I was married and Peter had a girlfriend, and a month later I had no husband and Peter had a new girlfriend, me. They got married in Las Vegas, and what followed was one of the stranger career partnerships in sport. Joe, a qualified hairdresser who owned and ran Medusa Hair in Lowestoft, took on every major role in Peter's professional life simultaneously: manager, financial controller, image director, and the last of those three is where Snakebite was actually born. Every snake design, every color scheme, every painted pattern on Peter Wright's head before a televised match comes from Joe's hands, and each session runs between 2 and 4.5 hours, with 4.5 hours being the documented record. Wright described the process to RTL 7 darts. If you move, she gives you a tap on your head. I cannot move. 9 times out of 10, Wright confirmed, Joe picks the design herself. His words on the matter: 9 times out of 10, I let Joanne do what she wants. She is the boss. The inspiration for colored hair came from their daughter Naomi, who changed her hair constantly. Wright told the Daily Mail, "It's down to my daughter because she's the one who has all different color hair, and I thought, I'll try that. No other dart players have tried it and it just stuck. I class it as going to war with my war paint on ready for battle." PDC Chief Executive Matt Porter said no when Wright first proposed the look. Chairman Barry Hearn overruled him, and Wright's own account of what happened next was simple. Barry Hearn said yes, and that created obviously Snakebite. Eric Bristow, one of the television heroes who'd originally inspired Wright as a boy, called him a clown when the mohawk first appeared, and then later pulled him aside and told him, you're brilliant for the darts, and just carry on. £1,200. That's what Peter Wright earned across his entire first full PDC season in 2008. Not per tournament, not per month, across the whole year. 4 years of grinding that circuit later, his first PDC ranking title came in October 2012 in Killarney, beating Robert Thornton 6-1 with 107 average. A win, yes, but the financial turning point hadn't arrived yet, and it nearly didn't arrive at all. The 2014 World Championship final is where Wright faced both the biggest opportunity and the closest thing to collapse in his career. He lost 7-4 to Michael van Gerwen, collected £100,000, and by most people's measure that represented a breakthrough. What Wright revealed later was something different entirely. His words to the Telegraph: "When I got to my first Worlds final in 2014, I was going to give darts up as we had no money left. Joe didn't realise I'd spent it all, and I knew I needed to win before she found out. We didn't even own a house, and Joe was the only one who sponsored me to cover my playing expenses such as flights, hotels, and entry fees. He didn't win, but he kept going anyway, and 3 years later, at the 2017 UK Open, Wright won his first major title, beating Gerwen Price 11-5 in the final after putting Phil Taylor out 10-6 in the semi-final, a win that reduced him to tears on stage and ended a 22-year wait from his BDO debut. None of that prepared anyone for January the 1st, 2020, Ali Pali, Wright against Van Gerwen in the World Championship final, and Wright won 7-3, averaging 102.79, landing 11 maximums and hitting 33% on doubles. At 49 years old, he became the oldest first-time PDC World Champion in history, ending 9 consecutive major final defeats to the same man. The celebration that followed has become one of the most quoted moments of his career. Wright told the Telegraph, "It was gone midnight when I got back to where I was staying, and I celebrated with a pot noodle, toast, and a cup of tea." 2 years on, January the 3rd, 2022, Wright stood in another World Championship final, this time against Michael Smith, and trailed 5-4, 2 legs to 0 in the 10th set, with the match slipping away. 9 of the next 10 legs went to Wright, and the title was his again, 7-5. Post-match, looking at Smith, Wright put it this way: "It's not about me, it's about the future of darts, and this man, he let me in today." March 2022 brought something else. World number 1 on the PDC Order of Merit. The first time in his career that ranking had been his. Career prize money now exceeds £6.2 million, placing Wright 3rd in the all-time darts earnings list behind Phil Taylor and Michael van Gerwen, and his 48 PDC titles include 8 major televised championships. Off the oche, Peter Wright is a different person entirely, and that gap between the stage version and the real one is bigger than most people expect. Quiet, reserved, someone who avoids crowds when he can and keeps himself to himself. Analyst Matt Edgar described it directly. The Peter Wright you see on stage isn't the Peter Wright you meet backstage. That's not who he really is. He isn't flamboyant, colourful, bouncy or chirpy off the oche. He's actually quite shy and reserved. Wright himself has never contradicted that read. His own words on the subject. It's like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, like Snakebite's my outer person. I'd like to be a confident, crazy guy. But people know me off the dartboard. Pretty shy, don't really talk to anyone really, just keep myself to myself and really shy. But that person up there, that's like putting all war paint on and going to battle. And then there's the financial picture, which remains one of the stranger arrangements in professional sport. Every pound of Wright's tournament winnings goes straight into Joe's company account, and Wright draws a weekly wage of around £200, overdrawn 9 times out of 10 by his own admission. His account of it to the Telegraph. I'm probably the poorest darts player who's world #1. My prize money gets paid into my wife's company account and I'm paid a wage. Joe sorts out the business side for when I retire. The arrangement is his own doing and he knows it. When Wright received the question about lavish purchases, the kind Van Gerwen and others had made after big paydays, his response was, "Me? Lavish purchases? No, I don't get to. Michael Van Gerwen's bought a Rolls Royce or something like that, and Michael Smith had bought something else. I get my £212 per week and just like playing my darts." The home in Mendham has a full pub setup in the man cave, a cinema room, a training studio, and reportedly up to 80 pet chickens. His mother lives nearby, above Joe's salon. May 2020, during the first lockdown, Joe underwent a major spine operation to fuse vertebrae in her lower back using screws, plates, and rods, targeting nerve pain that had become severe enough to affect daily life. Wright's assessment of the stakes at the time was blunt. The operation could go wrong and she could end up in a wheelchair. The surgery didn't fully resolve the problem, and in May 2021, during the Premier League, Joe returned to hospital for a spinal steroid injection under deep sedation at the London Spine Clinic. The worst came in November 2022. Joe had her gallbladder removed and suffered serious complications, a collapsed lung, and powerful painkillers that caused hallucinations severe enough that she later told Oki 180. "I was hallucinating and seeing monsters. It was very scary. If a window had been high enough to jump out of to die, I would have jumped." Wright pulled out of the Players' Championship finals to stay by her side, and his description of those 13 days she spent in hospital was, "Joe was in absolute agony and told me she feared she was dying because the pain was that bad." That same year, in August, Wright himself had his gallbladder removed in keyhole surgery for gallstones, missing several World Series events in the process. 2 surgeries, 1 household, 1 calendar year, all while he was defending a world title and trying to hold together a professional career. None of it made the headline packages, none of it got the airtime the tournament results did. By 2025, something in the professional picture had shifted, and the numbers tell the story plainly. Wright's European Tour average dropped to 91.4. His checkout rate fell to 31.5%. The Premier League selection that had come every year since 2013 stopped coming. At the 2026 World Championship, a 3-0 loss to Arno Merck followed, averaging 79.20, winning. Just 2 legs across the entire match. Michael Van Gerwen watched and gave his verdict on Sky Sports. "I think it's time for him to retire anyway." Gary Anderson, who'd stood beside Wright to win 2 World Cups, pushed back in the other direction. Give folk a break. What nobody expected, though, was what Wright did at the 2025 World Championship before any of the decline arrived, beating the defending champion Luke Humphries 4-1, averaging 100.93, hitting doubles at 70% at 54 years old. Afterwards, standing in front of the cameras, Wright delivered his position clearly. "I'm a double world champion and I want to win it for a 3rd time. I'm not too old." The question of what Snakebite means now has been circling the commentary for a while. Analyst Matt Edgar framed it this way. Snakebite used to sit in interviews and go, "I'm going to go win this," and he did. Now he says the same things and he doesn't. The 100% belief is gone. He needs to reinvent himself now and enjoy being Peter Wright. At the 2025 Players' Championship Finals, Wright appeared without his trademark punk hairstyle for the first time anyone could remember. Whether that was a reset or a farewell, nobody outside that household knows. What Peter Wright actually is, stripped back from the costume and the walk-on music and the painted snakes, is this: a boy born to a 16-year-old mother while his father sat in a prison cell, who threw darts at trees because a dartboard was too expensive, who worked pot wash shifts and building sites and window fitting jobs, who spent 4 to 5 years unemployed on £14 a week, and who came within one match of quitting the sport entirely in 2014 because the money had run dry. That same man went on to earn £6.2 million in career prize money, rank third on the all-time darts earnings list, and win the world title twice, and on the night of his first World CAS Championship win, having just beaten the world's best player in front of a full Alexandra Palace, he went back to his room past midnight and celebrated with a pot noodle, toast and a cup of tea. Wright put the whole thing best himself, standing in the Ali Pali spotlight in January 2020. You should never give up. It doesn't matter how many times you get beaten. Instead of people saying, the crazy guy with the crazy hair, all he is a runner-up. They can't say that anymore, can they? No, they can't. And now that you know where he came from, you can't unsee it either.